Well, I'm Bart Rademacher, and this is Transformational Art at Burning Man. And very excited today because we're actually going live on a radio station, internet radio station, Radio Star Worldwide. So, one of the coolest things that, we really get to experience in life, and that's the majesty of life, the regalness of life, and that's the ceremonial aspect of life where we get into that space where we really get to honor some of the coolest things in this planet, and that is simply a relationship with another special person in your own life. And where better to have this kind of experience, and one of the coolest places on the planet that actually happens once a year. I wish it was more, but once a year in the middle of one of the most desolate places in the world, with extreme temperature or extreme conditions, and 70,000 or 80,000 people find the wherewithal, the courage, the braveness, if you will, to go and spend an entire week there. That's called Burning Man. And for me, this has become such a beautiful event for so many amazing reasons, especially with the background that I have in so many different areas. I understand that place where we can expand even more. But what makes this really special, what makes this incredibly magical, is those beautiful human beings that create all this magic at Burning Man. And today, Michael Verdon, so appreciative of you and your stories, and the legacy actually that you're developing, because you've been involved with Burning Man for quite some time. But it's something that the essence of who you are as a human being that's brought to this place, and for us, souls like myself get to really enjoy. So thank you for joining me today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So share with us a little bit about, what does Burning Man actually mean for you? Because people listening in may not be quite familiar what it is. And, I still am challenged to kind of explain to people, because there are a lot of misconceptions about it, and I don't care about those. But what I do care about is that, Burning Man is what I would call a phenomenon. And a phenomenon with a huge social impact, but also on the level of individuals and their own personal, life.
Yeah. So what is Burning Man? Well, I guess you could ask 100 different people that question and you get 100 different answers, which is part of the beauty that I think is Burning Man. It's like a sandbox for society, a glimpse at utopia, and a really special and magical place that I believe only is special and magical because of the love and hard work that is poured into it from every angle. Some people, like the image behind you, the temple from this year, is a beautiful example of love and work being poured in. And that scales all the way down to some group of people, their camp, adopting porta potties and decorating them so that you have like a positive experience. It's like, or gifting is like the moment one person gives something to someone else without hope or expectation of return, and it creates like a mind synapses firing on all cylinders, all these connections, all these people coming together, just to share that magic and live in that utopian space for albeit 1 week.
You use the word utopian, and I would hazard to say this, is that because it's so available for us, it doesn't have to be that utopia. But you're right, though, because we live in this world, and we have all these obligations and things we feel we have to do, and distractions and everything else. And then for a short period of time, we get to know our real self, and that fun person. I mean, I love the the context, you know, you gave as of a sandbox. I mean, I remember playing in a sandbox when I was a kid, and now this sandbox is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what
And
50,
it
huh?
really does. It strips away a lot of um, masks that we have to wear. We go to work, or um, you're we're asked to do things that we don't necessarily want to do, but that we might have to do to survive in our current structures and society. And this for the week strips a lot of those away, and people are invited and welcome to be a more genuine version of themselves. Not to say that anyone who's going to work 9 to 5 is some kind of being fake. It just allows us that space, and it's really neat. You don't have to. There's not this call to check your phone every 5 minutes, or there's not, a phone call going to come in, and it's just a chance to really be present.
So, for those listening in and have no clue on Burning Man, this is an event in the middle of the desert, northern part of Nevada, about 2 hours north of Reno. And if we were to visit that place right now, you wouldn't find any of it evidence that anybody was there. That 70,000 people were there only just last month.
Yeah.
And so, what's remarkable is that we create an entire city. And there's thousands of people like yourself who create this opportunity for all of us to really go play in that sandbox. And interesting, as you were talking, I checked in with myself because this is my third time at Burning Man, and I noticed a certain kind of peace has descended upon me. I do a lot of personal growth, but that part of where I get to be myself, and you said the words, your genuine, authentic self. And you get to meet that person, and there is no judgment. I mean, people are wearing the craziest stuff or not, frankly, and then you get to meet all these different people and just have fun with somebody that you otherwise probably wouldn't pay attention to in the bar. And how sad is that? And so why do we have to have just that time? But what happens is that when you go to Burning Man and you go back to the real world, that you then become much more fun to be around, and you have more fun to be around other people.
Yeah, I feel like part of what that comes from is often the when you go to Burning Man, you get to relate to yourself in a different way, and oftentimes I find that people really appreciate or enjoy that interperson relationship with themselves in a new way, and so they take some of that home. And I believe that oftentimes at Burning Man, or at least it's been a goal of mine anyway, for the last few years, to bring, actually I guess since 2011, I started bringing part of Burning Man to the local DC community in a way that was like my expression. Building temples on the East Coast, but that is part of the hope, is that everyone takes that new piece of themselves, integrates, transforms, and ultimately it does have an effect that becomes like more joyous in their own life.
Right. So you started in 2011, is that it? Is that your first?
My first Burning Man was in 2008. I got a smartphone, and I had never listened to any podcasts before, and I knew that this device handled podcasts really well. And so I searched for Alex Gray, and I came back with this podcast called The Psychedelic Salon by this gentleman named Lorenzo. And he would have a talk, and then he would, like a personal talk, and then he would play a clip from like Aldous Huxley, Alex Gray, Timothy Leary, Terence McKenna, and one of these talks from Alex Gray, he's like, and in the middle of it, it's going to be really hard to hear, it's going to be really strange, they're in the middle of a dust storm, and I'm like, I'm sure, whatever that is. So I'm listening to it, and then all of the halfway through, I were like, "All right, put on your dust mask." And I'm like, "Oh, sure, 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 sure." I'm like, "What is happening?" So I looked it up on the internet, and I just felt the call, and I drove across the country with my partner at the time. Um, 30 days later.
Wow.
So that was 2008, and I have been going ever since, consecutive.
So you've been very active in bringing one of the key elements to the playa, as you call it, and that's art.
Yeah.
And so share a little bit about the meaning of that. And I know you've done a lot of work with the temple, and
Mm-hmm.
we'd love to hear from you. You know, what's that meaning of the man, the temple, the burning of that, and basically the transformation we go through.
So the first year that I went in 2008, I actually, my partner got sick and we left on Sunday morning. We didn't get to see the temple burn, but it's the Temple Basura. It's quite beautiful. Um, and in 2009, we stayed the whole time. And uh, beyond the initial transformation, the challenge of it, the beauty of it, I mean, that's part of what I think the transformation, not just that we talked about the joy, but oftentimes Burning Man challenges you in ways that you hadn't expected, hadn't anticipated, didn't even think about. And then Burning Man has a way of taking that and putting it into your face,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's the last thing you expected. And um, and I believe that part of the major transformation comes from the challenge and you rising above that challenge or meeting that challenge, how you meet that challenge. And so in 2009, uh, at the end of the burn, sitting around a fire with 20 to 30,000 people, no less, in silence, um, struck me as just something that you you can't get three people to be quiet for too long, and so many people sitting in reflective, somewhat reverent silence. Um, you know, influenced me, gave me some kind of like feeling of hope in some way, where like this huge group of people all respecting each other in a way that felt really simple and genuine. And so, um, actually, then I got involved in a theme camp at Burning Man doing the Black Rock Farmers Market, which was a really wild thing to do, like fresh fruit and vegetables to people. And our initial plan was doing that during farmers' hours, which we later changed because that's too early.
Right.
But I started making art on the East Coast in 2011. Got involved bringing that, trying to bring that experience that I had with the 2009 temple. Um, you leave your message, and then everyone is given this space to reflect. So I started leading temples on the East Coast at regionals in 2011, and I continued going. Got involved in other art projects and doing temple work still on the East Coast. And in 2015, we crossed over and we're doing public temple burns at George Mason University and in front of the White House on the National Mall. And then in 2016, I volunteered for the Burning Man Temple, working with David Best. Um, and the level of not seriousness, but talking about the crew for 2016, everyone really brought like the sense of they were doing something important, even if we were like having fun and being
Mm-hmm.
silly. Um, there was like a understanding that what we were doing is really important, and it creates. I think the temple does create a something on the other end of the balance beam that gives it an outlier that's not just in like a party, even though I would not call Burning Man just a party. Some people frame it that way, and I think that's a mistake. But if if you think about all this exuberant celebration, I think about the temple as like holding it in balance as like this kind of spiritual or reflective place. So the idea that this space co-creates the sandbox, there's kind of like two anchor points I think about at Burning Man that are not produced by, but sponsored by, or that's the wrong word.
Supported.
Supported, yeah, fully supported, and as part of like Burning Man infrastructure. That's right. I guess the word I'm thinking about. And so I've just really loved being a part of that crew in 2016, so much so that I came back in 2017 to work with the next group who did it, which was Marisa, Steve, and Mark, I think, the leads. And just the relationships, the people, there's a group of people who come back often, and it's like the one time a year where you get to see those family members who you've gone through so much with, so much challenge, building in the hot desert when it's 112 degrees. It is as challenging as it sounds. And building with those people and then coming back and only getting to see them once a year, it really does make it like a reunion. And I hope to continue that reunion, actually. But this year we brought a project called the Chapel of the Chimes, which was created like a tale of 3 temples, including some work from the Renwick Gallery. That was the art of Burning Man, no spectators, the art of Burning Man at the Smithsonian. And really amazing to get to incorporate that from this area and like bring it full circle back to Burning Man. And I don't know, I look forward to doing more artwork in the future, because it's not the thing that makes Burning Man what it is, but the artwork and the scale that you're allowed to play with there is unlike anywhere else on the planet that I've experienced. So being able to contribute to that feels incredible.
So as you were talking, I was just sharing some of the pictures that you shared with me earlier on. And I want to talk much more about the Chapel of the Chimes, because it's such a beautiful story that you shared with me. And again, it's coming back to that essence of us being humans, and the joy of being able to share our lives with somebody else, and the importance of that, and the joy that we have it, and the sadness when we don't, but also to honor that as well. But what I really enjoy what you said earlier, and I think this is a key thing, is that in our fragmented society today, not to get too philosophical, but sometimes I do tend to get philosophical on this platform, but the whole idea of community has been is lost, and it's unfortunate, and the family unit is so disenfranchised and is disconnected. And fortunately I've been able to maintain a great connection with all of my kids, but again, I mean, they're busy in their lives. And so I think society these days is getting lost with not appreciating, not even acknowledging that it's important to have values, and it's important to have structure in life. And so what I think, one of the words that sprung up to me when you were talking earlier about what Burning Man was for you, and that's belonging. And now you got 70,000 people from all the corners of this earth, from all the different types of cultures and races and beliefs, and certainly politics, right? All in the same sandbox. And sometimes people get a little upset because you took their little favorite toy, but for the most part, it's what we call radical self-acceptance and radical expression, where you really get to be playful and be yourself and meet people that you otherwise would never meet, and be perfectly okay with how they show up, and be perfectly okay with how you show up, which is even more important. And then what I like what you said also is the hard work, and the term that came up to me is the dedication. to show up as your best, to experience your best, and then create some magic, like the magic that's behind me, which is the tempo this year. And it's just absolutely amazing, some of the work that people have done, and even from the smallest thing to the largest. It's just bringing all this to the desert is an incredible task, full of challenges. And again, to put in perspective for anybody who's not familiar with Burning Man, they create a city in the middle of nowhere, and as an individual, you're responsible to bring everything that you need for an entire week or however long you are, and also to take everything out. You can't buy anything. Well, maybe coffee and ice, that's about it. But you can't buy anything. And so it's also, radical self-reliance. And so in extreme conditions, and then in that place, being connected with others, and just absolutely be in a place of contribution. You're gifting, and it's a really cool place to be in, just by gifting whatever it is that you want to gift to others. So, your thoughts on this idea of belonging? Because again, I think what's key here, Michael, is it is that place that we can feel our brotherhood or sisterhood with others, complete strangers, and then go home with more energy and a spring in our step, because we just had a phenomenal time in the sandbox.
Well, I wanted to make one comment really quickly. Like, we referenced the size of the city. It is, according to at least a couple sources on the internet, for 1 week, it is the 4th largest city in the state of Nevada.
Wow.
So, out of all the cities that exist, I don't know, just that number is impressive. And I don't know, and they're trying to have it grow in the future as well. But your question, the belonging.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think about belonging in Black Rock, and I think that comes in 2 stages, where one is the principle of radical inclusion, which starts with anyone may be a part of Burning Man. We welcome the stranger. And there's an openness, an initial openness that I think has become lost in normal society. Not to get too philosophical, but in the world where we're inundated with bad news about local folks, or kind of be scared of your neighbor, don't ask them for sugar. Not to say that those stories don't happen, but they are the outlier and not the norm. And so I think a lot of folks end up walling themselves in, and Burning Man as a sandbox attempts to remove that layer. And something else you said that I think couples with it is not just some level of inclusion, like, yeah, you can be a part of it, but also acceptance. Like, heck yes, you can be a part of it. Not just, okay, sure, you can be a part of it because you're here. And when you put down those walls, I think you find that you're not as far away from other folks as you think you might be.
Right.
And this idea of the sandbox, where to say anything goes isn't completely accurate. There are limits, but within a general sense of like not doing harm to other folks, you can do whatever you want and not be misjudged, or you can wear whatever you want and people won't think twice about it. You can be silly, people won't think twice about it. You can be kind and give gifts, and no one is, and that is, I think, so unlike what we have, at least what I've experienced in a day-to-day life outside of Burning Man. So it's this acceptance, this inclusion, and then this openness with acceptance, and it really makes you feel like it's okay. And even actually, there's like another level to that, because I've experienced times, and I know that I have other friends who've experienced times when you don't feel like you belong, or you don't feel like you have a place, and you walk around Burning Man, you look at things, and you're like, but, and you're feeling like separate. And I think that the matter of the fact is that that separation is you and yourself. And when you shed that again, there are people there who, you know, would love to talk to you, or would love to give you a hug, or would love to welcome you, you know. And so it's, I just wanted to say that because I know that some people have that experience, and so not to make folks who don't feel like they have a moment of not belonging feel left out, because that happens as well. But when you move through that, Burning Man is still there with open arms.
And that's so true. I mean, not only, you know, people just respecting everybody else's, you know, space for the most part. There's always exceptions here or there, but for the most part, it's just being so respectful and honoring, you know, how they're showing up, and then that then also often translates, and hopefully always translates into what you're basically suggesting. You can actually be yourself, the silly person yourself, and it's fun because then you get to meet yourself. When in normal society you have to behave in certain ways because otherwise you judge, or you this or you that. You know, you have to show up in a certain way at the job. You can't say certain things now, and it's sort of like in that space, yeah, and people will be honest with you, and you've got the choice to either like something or not like something, but not making it, you know, everybody else's problem. It's just you, and that's where the burn, I think, is really important, because you know, you're being challenged in so many ways, and the only way that I think we get to grow is by overcoming those challenges, as you shared earlier on. And I think that's an important element of all that. But the one thing now, getting into your projects, and I think the projects are really important. And one of the reasons, yeah, I like doing these interviews, Michael, is simply this, is that for me, you know, I am hungry for novelty, for differences, for, you know, finding new ways, like as you mentioned, connecting these different synapses in my brain. I mean, I just delight on all that. I mean, I'm like a little kid in a candy store, you know, seeing all the different arts and the different music and the different people and the different workshops and all these things that stimulate my brain and really open up, you know, my imagination and my horizons in life. And I think that's a cool part. And one of the things that I feel very motivated, and I think you'll appreciate this, is simply this, is that when you go around and you see art pieces, how fun is it to really get to know the inspiration behind artists? Because, you know, I've already got my perception of it. I've already got my ideas based on all my experiences, but it's even more beautiful when you hear the experiences and inspirations of the artists, because that's when you really get, I think, to see the magic of what's happening. And so I know that your story, you've brought different elements into a chapel of the Chimes. And many people really got the benefit in a beautiful way, honoring two souls together. So share the inspiration between the chapel and describe the chapel, and I'll be throwing some pictures in here and there, and I'll show the video as you're talking.
Okay. So the Chapel of the Chimes is a project that came together from multiple projects. I am a founder and a facilitator at an event called Catharsis on the Mall, and it is an annual vigil for healing that are some of our modalities of healing. We believe things that are healing are music, art, dancing, workshops, knowledge sharing, and burnout. And we believe all of these things can lead to personal transformation. And my personal mantra for one of these things is in the healing space is that inner peace creates outer peace. And so Catharsis on the Mall is a ticketless event. It's free and open to the public that we started in 2015. And in 2015, we were allowed to burn our entire temple. And then in 2016, as we were going to install, they gave us a no, we're not allowed to do that. So we had to meet with them and figure out what to do. And we had to take that one down from the mall. It was never intended to do that. And we brought it to a regional. Well, in 2017, the design approach changed to be something that would be able to be put up and taken down. And it was put up, well received, and it was taken down, and it lived in a couple other various places, but it didn't have a kind of final resting place yet. And in 2019, the Temple for Catharsis, I got the pleasure of leading that. And the idea was that we were creating the base become the chapel. So 2019's Catharsis Temple was the foundation level of the chapel. And then the temple from 2017 was the top of the chapel of the Chimes. And then we created parts that were just for Burning Man to bridge that gap. That were all designed and created just to share there, which is something really special. We expanded the chimes. We included 65 harmonically tuned chimes so that when you heard them, there was an actual harmony and a beautifulness to the sound instead of what could have been a clingy mishmash cacophony, which could be a great project, but wouldn't be this project. And the idea, because Burning Man, the temple at Burning Man can be a very somber, reflective space. And the joyousness of 50 people cheering and hooping and hollering doesn't always merge well with some of the energy that's happening there. And so I thought it would be really beautiful to merge these temples, these sacred spaces, into the chapel and have the chapel be this ceremony space, this beautiful, open, loving place. And so we had a fence, but the fence was done radially, so you could come in from every angle. You weren't like kind of filtered around, just in this idea of openness. And we had, so that was two major temples of 2017, 2019. There were decorative elements that were cut for 2018's temple that we had left over and included in this. And then the final kicker was for the burn. We brought, excuse me. We brought, thank you, over about 100,000 tablets from the Renwick exhibit, which was a temple installed, specially made for the exhibit in the Smithsonian. And people were allowed to write on these tablets, and those tablets were being collected and kept off site. And we reached out to the Smithsonian and asked them if we could bring those tablets to Burning Man to be burned. And they were, of course, delighted. They had initially they had not told people that they were going to burn them because they couldn't promise that. So in a way, we got to fulfill this intention that temples often bring, which is the sacred fire. And so that was part of our fire element. So we got a tale of really like 4 temples into one new reimagined sacred space just for Burning Man. So kind of bringing it full circle where the Burning Man, particularly temples, were brought to DC in a way, and then we brought those things from DC back to Burning Man. So,
so tell me one thing, because um, I'm very familiar with the idea of burning.
Mhm.
So what is that for you, and what is that significance or the meaning of burning?
Mm. Well, so Burning Man, Burners, David Best, myself, we're none of us are the first persons, people, group to treat sacred as a treat fire as a sacred element, um, as a cleansing element, as a purifier, as something that brings about truth. I mean, one of the oldest religion, like from Iran, the Zoroastrians, they worshipped fire. I believe that uh, philosophically, fire, our command of fire, is what helped make us human beings, Homo sapiens. Um, so we're not the first, uh, but so I believe actually that that's part of it. Is in us, in humans, there is often like a reverence or mm, something about fire that strikes an inner chord that would be hard to verbalize, but is innate in most people. Like watching something burn, watching even a campfire, being mesmerized by that. I think that that comes from 400,000 years of us engaging with fire in a different way than other animals on the planet. And it I mean, it's used to clear forest. It's part of the natural order of things in a lot of ways. And so to reharness it as this cleansing tool, this mechanism for bringing about truth or setting us free without the burdens of the past, um, really strikes me. So I think that's kind of what makes the fire element. Um, it's what it has done for us historically. And
Right.
I do believe that it has like a cleansing property to it. I mean, you know, water that's dirty, you would heat it up and become distilled. You could drink it, right?
Right.
Um, it's in a lot of nooks and crannies of places if you look hard enough.
Yeah, I mean, as you're talking, I mean, what comes to my mind, and the reverence of that too, by the way, the power and the energy of fire itself, and as you're talking, I remember those nights watching campfires and really connecting with that meditative space and realizing, subliminally that, we have to break down things as well so that we can build.
Yeah.
And too often I think in our lives we carry way too much baggage,
Yeah.
and no criticism of that, but it's just our experiences and our learnings, and the culture impact and family impact, whatever that is, and that we're carrying way too much, and for me it's almost symbolic to say, look, I'm going to break this down, I'm going to burn this stuff so that I can have basically like a fresh start. and
Mhm.
and I think that's the beauty of it as well. And I've personally had some other rituals or experiences, all the learnings that I've had over the years, particularly in the realm of energy healing,
Mhm.
and where you do let go, and it's an honoring of what it was and what it did for you, and it's a
Mhm.
recognition that yes, this no longer belongs in your life. And so I think that's an important element of what Burning Man is or can be for those who really want to do experience that transformation. And again, as you said, it's that place that you've created also, where there is that silence, and people can just reflect on the
Mhm.
things that are in their lives that perhaps don't belong anymore, but also reflect on the opportunities of what can. And that's where the beautiful ceremonies, I think there were, 50 ceremonies that you held. I mean, how beautiful is that?
Um, that was truly incredible. It definitely had been a goal and something that I would hope happened at this space because that was part of its intention. But you never know how people receive it or how it will be interacted with or engaged with until you install it. And yeah, I would. I would estimate we had over 50 weddings,
Wow.
some legally binding weddings, many of which were just like heartfelt ceremonies between multiple folks. Um, but there was one Tuesday sundown, I came upon the space and there was a wedding happening. And then I got involved as a witness. I got to sign the paperwork that someone who was getting legally married. And this is, other than putting it out into the universe and telling people that's the intention, um, I didn't want to get involved in organizing it. I wanted it to just, there's the space, people interact with how they want. Um, and so um, after the legal wedding, there was another wedding, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. And then a friend showed up, and he was officiating for a wedding, and then another group of 30 people showed up to have a ceremony, and I was like actually feeling a little nervous because you never know what's going to happen. And they like popped their head in, and they just saw that there was a ceremony happening, and they just had a ceremony outside. And then really beautiful ceremony. They all lined up and they came down the aisle and they all had a lot of fun. And then the FIFA camp, they came, they all had on checkered outfits and there was a ceremony for them. And it was just this, we poured love into it. And I think that it showed in a lot of the work. I don't know what image, if there's any up now or had been, but most of that structure, most of the Chapel of Chimes was cut by human hands. Volunteers who might have never used a jigsaw or a router before in their life, pouring time, energy, love, dedication into this. And I think that that resonated with a lot of folks. And so there was ceremony after ceremony, loving kiss after loving kiss under the arch. It felt like we had created as something special that that welcomed people and invited them in to have that kind of experience. And it really warmed my heart.
Oh, that's awesome.
I loved it.
You're totally successful in that one, and I'm sure maybe hit one of the records there of one place, officiating so many ceremonies. I know that I was responsible for one of them because in our camp, one of my duties was to contribute some time there, and we had this beautiful couple, and they knew that I was a photographer, and they said, "Hey, we're getting married. Where do you? I mean, you've seen all the art because one of my missions this burn was to capture all the art on film, and I'm fortunate I captured a lot of that, a great percentage, on my Facebook page or Transformational Art at Burning Man group page. Mm-hmm. And so they wanted me to be their photographer, and I said, I don't know, but you really have to go to the Chapel of the Chimes. I told them exactly where it was, and I think it was probably Thursday night or at sunset was their wedding, and so I'm hoping that they went there because I can't think of any better place, for that to happen. And one of the things that I love about what happens at Burning Man, and again for those people who are tuning in, and Peggy Sue is listening to us by the way, and she's giving
hi Peggy,
a bunch of hearts there. But it takes a lot of people to create this, and I'm kind of curious, how many people actually worked the burn itself. But your group, I mean, how many people were involved, and what was that part like? And I think it's such a beautiful thing, especially when it comes to community, that people are doing things that they've never done before with people that they've never met before, and a beautiful piece of work comes out of it.
So as I had mentioned before, this project kind of started in 2017, and without looking at the paper, because I try to keep some documentation, the number of volunteers was between 50 and 70 of that. And 2019's had 30 to 50, and that doesn't include any of the burn perimeter organizational level stuff. That's just hands-on, people in the shop, people doing the install, people doing the cutting. Um, and so, hats off to all the groups who really make it possible. But just for the build, so 2017, some overlap with the crew from 2019, but and then the installation of Chapel of the Chimes, we had over 30 folks from across the globe, many of which who had never met, and probably 50% of whom I didn't know that well before the event. And that's speaks to the dedication and the love that the groups of people who put in. They saw what we were doing, they believed in it, they showed up, and they showed up to make something special happen. So all in all, I mean, I would say over 100 to 150 folks had their hands on it over the past 3 years. It's really amazing, and I feel blessed and honored to get to lead so many people time and time again. Must be doing some things right, and it feels really amazing. And to be able to come to Burning Man and work with these other amazing humans who I might not have ever met before the event, and just, I don't know, constantly a reminder of tenacity and the spirit of humans. So.
And the ability of a complete strangers working together in harmony to create something for somebody else. I mean, I think that's miraculous. But you had to bring everything from DC, right?
So we brought all the parts, like 95% cut. Everything was ready to kind of be Lego assembled. And it was actually a very strange thing for me personally, because I usually bring bins and bins and bins and bins of tools and equipment. And for this one, our cohort, Sean, who's a builder on the West Coast, lives in Las Vegas, was like, no, I got it. I'll bring it. I got that. I
know where this is going.
And it was a blessing, because bringing it to and from actually would have been extremely challenging. So really, like, our community members showed up to help make this project even more successful, so that we also didn't have to bring extra hammers or drills across the country. So trying to reduce our footprint on that.
Oh, I thought maybe you were going to say you were relying on somebody else to bring all the equipment, and then you found out when you arrived there half of it was missing.
No, not half, just like a quarter,
I've heard those stories. There's a beautiful Russian group who came in last year, and their art piece was the intersection, I think it's called, and an entire container didn't show up.
Oh,
so
God.
It's like, it's those disasters. And then Laura Bernard from Move Bikes, beautiful soul, she's always been having problems, with her suppliers, and then, parts aren't there or bikes aren't working, and that's the amazing thing.
There's always something.
There's always something, and I think, what's a testament to the tenacity of people, as you say, is that some people are building even towards the end of the burn, because of all the challenges. I mean, bad weather, winds, dust, supplies, everything else. And it's interesting because this is my second year really doing all the photographs, and that's my gift back to the playa, to not only interview the artists, but to get as many photographs up there so that people can see what they actually missed. And what's interesting is that I got there 2 days beforehand, and I zipped around on one of these e-bikes to as many art projects as possible. And by Sunday morning, I figured, I got about 80%, and I was really proud of myself. I captured about 80% of all the art, and so now I could just enjoy, relax, and enjoy my friends, go to some project or workshops and all that kind of stuff. By Tuesday, I realized that it wasn't 80% anymore. It was more like 50%.
Yeah.
It's like I started seeing these pieces like, well, where did that show up? And so I need to recalculate how I'm going to do it next year, because I was telling people, look, I got 80% of the art. I says, wow. And then only to find out it's only 50. So,
Yeah, I mean, there were over 400 placed art objects. I mean, you talk about the city and art being a part of it. Where else in any city almost can you find? Nowhere can you find that kind of concentration.
right.
But over 400 placed, pre-assigned art projects that don't include theme camps or anything in the city.
Yeah.
Like, if you love art and you love expression and just experience, like Burning Man definitely has that in spades.
You know, and the fun part on this too, by the way, is it's also interactive, and you know, it was fun to see people climb on the different
Yeah.
projects, and one of one of the ones that I really liked was by Benjamin Langholtz, where he actually suspended these rocks, and I interviewed him as
Oh,
well, and it was a great story because he's telling me, you know, that you know, he just decided he was going to do something, but didn't know what he was going to do. And so then he ended up going to Japan, and then this idea came up, and the stones, how to suspend them. And we were talking beforehand, and it was about, well, I don't know if people are going to be able to climb up. You know, it's like 2 stories high or something. And at the end of the day, you know, when I first saw it, there were like people all over this thing. And so
Yeah.
it's the whole interaction and experience that's just tremendously beautiful. But challenges are something that's part of, you know, creating the art at Burning Man. And any particular challenges that you had to face and overcame?
Um, any challenges, particularly for well, not the only thing. One of the things that felt the most challenging, I would say, was doing a burn after the man burns on Saturday night. It is Burning Man is really hard. If you take out doing anything, 400 art projects to bike around to see all day, and like interaction, like just the climate, the temperature, those things are challenging. And so do that for a week, and then go out every night and ride around and see all the art projects. By Saturday, a lot of people have less energy,
Right.
And it doing something after the man burns. Everyone, there's often like a looseness by that time, and so it takes a lot of I don't know. It takes a lot of planning and dedication to do that on Saturday, and so not for the challenge that it was, but like not asking other folks to do that, or like giving people the space where they could like let their hair down on Saturday night. I think would feel better and be less challenging for a lot of folks, because it's like at the end of your marathon. Now you have to do 100-yard dash,
Right.
and you're like, oh, I just ran 26, but even that, I mean, there's beauty in that challenge because people did show up and we were able to do all the things, and our build went beautifully. We ended still friends with each other. Our build site will probably be in the Arteries manual for how to do a mindful build site. I feel like our crew came out and really stepped up, brought their A game, and I don't know, I'm so grateful for each and every person on our crew, from our photographers to our rigging specialists, you know, like everybody, everywhere in between. I'm so grateful for all of those people to have made this vision that I had come to fruition. And in doing so, weaving all of our stories together, and then once they're weaving stranger stories in, you know, it just allows us to grow community in a really beautiful way.
Well, I love it. And actually, with those wonderful words, we're going to wrap it up, Michael. Chapel of the Chimes, Burning Man 2019. What a beautiful thing that you've created. What a wonderful experience that we get to have this magical moments, changing people's lives forever. Creating these new unions between beautiful souls, and all because of your vision, your team, the hard work, and everyone else. So I want to thank you for today, Michael. I'm looking forward to next year and what wonders you're going to bring to us. And I'm just going to wrap it up with a really short video by Travis Kossel, some of the beautiful arts, and then I'll be right back with you. Hold on a second.
See you on the plane.
Thanks for listening to Dr. Rademacher's Prescription for Transformation. Join Dr. Bart Rademacher live right here on StarWorldWideNetworks.com or on demand 24/7.